what we'll do, and then I'm gonna do the outro, and then I think after that we're just that'll be it. So, but um, but yeah, let me think. You did the Gwen Stacy episode with me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Um, before we get into the show, I'm just curious, like, I try to ask all of my guests, like, is there a particular episode, topic, thing that you would just really like to like delve into? Because I tend to reach out to you guys, and I'm like, hey, I need someone for this episode. I need someone for like this episode. Is there ever like a topic or like just kind of like a subsection of Spider-Man that you would really like to just kind of get into on this show at some point? Because if there is, I'll try to pencil you in for it when I get to it.
Um, I'm trying to think that I really like. We should definitely talk about Beach Party. I feel like I like talking about her a lot.
About who?
And would you say?
I'm sorry, about who?
Oh, Felicia.
Oh, Felicia? Okay. Oh, well, we're going to talk about her next episode. So,
Definitely.
yes.
And I can always talk about Jessica's Blue Spider-Woman as well.
Okay. That's actually that's a good idea, and one I don't think I have gotten around to yet. So, I'll definitely keep you in mind for her as well. So,
Okay.
all right, and Sith Apple is joining us already. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. I hope all is well. Um, I'm still hunting for news items for the last week. There hasn't been a lot, and so I'm trying to. Oh God. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just. It's funny. Like I should just like talk about these as I put them into the notes, and then we can just like skip the news section. I don't know. That seems kind of wrong to me, but uh, I look at them and I'm just like, like I have immediate reactions. Basically, I'm like, why are they doing that? Or, you know, oh my goodness. And that formatting is just a thing, and I don't like it. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We're just gonna go ahead and throw this out right here. And we may come back to it. But you're Jaleh, do you game much?
Just a little.
Like what do you like to play?
Right now, I'm playing the Legends of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game a lot.
Ooh, oh, that's a good one.
It's a good one. And then I do Mario, on those kinds of things.
Okay, so you like the big kind of like AAA titles with the really iconic, like, the ones that have been in our childhoods, basically,
Yeah.
right? Okay, that's completely fair. And did you have you played any of the Spider-Man games?
I haven't played any of the Spider-Man games.
You haven't?
No, I know. It's
Okay.
lacking on my Spider-Man video gaming.
Um, the reason I'm bringing it up is because of this news item right here. Um, this comes from IGN, and apparently Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is getting a trial release on PlayStation Plus Premium. Are you familiar with PlayStation Plus at all?
No.
Okay. PlayStation Plus is a service that I probably will not subscribe to at any point in the near future. What it is I think you pay like, it's sort of like Game Pass for like, for like Xbox and stuff, where you pay like a monthly fee, and then they have like several different tiers of it. And so you can pay for PlayStation Plus, and then you can play for PlayStation Plus Premium for like an extra probably 10 or 20 bucks a month. And then in exchange for paying this money, they give you access to like certain games in their library for free, essentially. And it's a really cool deal if you're like someone who doesn't want to spend like $70 on a game and everything, and you just want to pay it. But the thing is that the coverages change quite often. So games show up and they go away. And again, I can see the appeal, but it's just not for me. I'm the kind of person who likes to buy a game and then own it, essentially, Well, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is apparently going to get a trial on PlayStation Plus Premium, which I think is the highest level tier that you can purchase for that service. And I took a look at the news article, and it says what will happen is that uh, people who are subscribed to that tier can download the game, and then they'll get to play it for up to 2 hours before they have to then make a decision on whether or not to purchase the game.
Jeez.
And I was reading that, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Why would you do that? If you're going to put this game on a high tier of your monthly service, shouldn't you just offer it for free? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to understand all of the stuff that goes into making like a Game Pass service like that. But I mean, on the surface, for me, I'm just like this. This sounds like a robber baron kind of thing. Like just say, just make it a demo, release it on the PlayStation Network for free, and give way more people the opportunity to do that. It was just kind of a thing. I'm like, why? Why did you do this? Why?
I would be so mad if I paid for that service, and then they were like, "Oh, you actually still have to buy the game."
I don't know. I was just looking at it, and I'm like, well, I guess I need to report on this just because it's stupid. So, let's see. Have you seen any of the marketing for Madam Web?
I haven't.
Okay. So it's coming out on Valentine's Day, and it's got oh gosh, I don't remember the actress's name, but she basically is playing Cassandra Webb, except like that Madam Web is really old in the comics, and in this one she's like, I don't know, in her 30s, let's say. And she's basically mentoring like 3 other, like she's psychic, she can see things before they happen. And it looks like she's going to be mentoring 3 other women and trying to protect them. And it's like Anya Corazon, and it's Maddie Franklin, and who's the other one? Julia Carpenter. And they're all like women who have the ability to become Spider-Woman, and they've all been, some version of Spider-Woman or girl in the comics. But apparently they're being hunted, and it looks like they're being hunted by, this still sticks in my craw, Ezekiel Sims. And it's like, it looks like he's come from the future to kill them or something. It's like Terminator in the Spider-Man universe. And I mean, it sounds bonkers. I'm actually kind of okay with this. Like I'm like the concept is like, okay, all right, I can get behind this, but I'm gonna have to go see this movie to see how they execute it. But I don't know. I keep seeing articles about it, and I try not to report on it unless there's just new marketing or something. But everyone's got a think piece about why that movie is going to fail or why it's going to succeed, and I don't know. But I don't know. Just based on what I told you, like, do you have any thoughts on the premise or anything?
I feel like I haven't seen any movies. I feel like it does not sound like something totally up my alley, but since it's Spider-Man related, I'll eventually watch it.
Did you ever watch Morbius?
I never saw Morbius.
Oh God, don't. You can't get that time back. Um, it's funny because I went and saw that one in the theaters, and I knew it was going to be bad, but I went anyways with one of my friends, and we just laughed at it the whole time. But it's really like wow. The only redeeming part of that movie is Matt Smith. Matt Smith was actually, I think he was like, oh, this place is just a freaking house fire. All right, let's just have some fun, and that's what he does. So
I love Matt Smith.
oh, he's great. He's my favorite Doctor. He it helps that he was the first Doctor that I ever watched. but
Right.
he's definitely my favorite Doctor. So okay, there is just not a lot of good news this week. Like, okay, newsworthy stuff. Like everything I'm seeing here is think pieces, and I don't care about some columnist's opinion on comicbook.com about why I don't know. Who? No, no. Donald Glover says that he's too old to play Spider-Man. Says that himself. I don't know. He could play an older Miles Morales, I think.
Have they done with an older Miles Morales?
No. I mean, I think they've done it like in Spider-Man Life Story, where you're like literally traveling through the decades with them. But Miles, I mean, he's been around for about 11 or 12 years, or is it 13 years? And so in comic book time, that's like 3 months. So, but I think I think at this point, if I had my way, if I were to launch the comics again, I would just say, let Miles and Cindy and Gwen, let them be all the young spider people having Spider-Man adventures and everything. Let Peter be like their mentor. He's the one that's got like 60 plus years of history behind him. He's lost his Gwen, and he's been buried by Craven and had to deal with the Black Suit saga. He got his heart broken by Felicia. He's done all this stuff. Let him be their like mentor, their coach. Let Peter Parker be Ted Lasso, basically. I think that would be the way to go myself. But they don't pay me for that kind of thing. They don't pay me at all. So. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's really the only news item that I can find. So I'll bring that up again. And I think we can go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes here. I'm going to go ahead, put on my headphones and change my sound settings. So that way, let's just say that I avoid some glitchy business whenever I do that. So, and, are you're able to hear me okay and everything?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. All right, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that they can hear my headphones here, or that the computer can see my headphones, I guess. All right, and hopefully everything has transferred over to my headphones now. Can you hear me, Jaleh?
I can hear you.
Okay, and I can hear you through the headphones, so yay! All right, let me see. All right. Oh, I was like, where's my script? It's right in front of me. You ever do that? I love it. I love it. I do it with my glasses all the time. They're up here, Where are my glasses at? Yeah.
I'll do it with my glasses. I'll do it with my phone. Like, it'll be in my hand. I'm like, where's my phone?
Yes. Yes, this is how you're not as aware as you used to be. All right. Okay, all right. So we ready to do this?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here, we discuss all aspects of our favorite web-slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, the Spidey Librarian, and we are in the start of February this week. And as we inch closer to Valentine's Day, I am rejoined by former guest Jaleh Najafali, a former writer with me on the Superior Spider Talk website, as we focus our character spotlight on the arguable love of Peter's life, Mary Jane Watson. Jaleh, welcome back to the show. How are you doing? How has 2024 been for you so far?
I'm doing great. 2024 has been busy, but a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, well, it is always good to have you back. I'm glad to hear that things are going well. And I would just like to quickly note that Michael Greenhale was also supposed to join us today, but unfortunately he got sick at the last minute. So we'll miss you this episode, Michael, and hope that you get well soon. And hopefully I'll get you on a different episode some other time. All right. Couple of house cleaning notes. The web lines. I can't talk today. I can never talk whenever I podcast. I just can't do it. So, all right. The Webline streams on Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Time on my YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there as well as on your favorite podcast service, and leave us a like, review, and follow where appropriate. If you're on a service that doesn't carry the Webline, let me know by shooting me an email at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to get it pushed out to you. Finally, for those of you here on the live stream with us today, 1, welcome, and 2, please be sure to thwip the like button and chime in with your perspectives in chat. The Spidey Librarian Patreon provides access to my premium content. There's currently just one tier, the $5 Spider Society Citizen tier, which gets members shoutouts on the Webline podcast and on my uploaded YouTube videos, a special role on the Spidey Librarian Discord server, Spider Society Citizen, and now live reaction content. I've got 3 watch-along reactions on live stream available to paid subscribers, and that number will keep growing. It includes The Amazing Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and a movie I hadn't seen up until that reaction, Jurassic Park. Yes, I only just watched it last month. You can also, for free on Patreon, vote for which movies I'll next be watching. That's right, you do not have to be a paying member to access movie polls. More roles, perks, and possibilities will arise as we grow and diversify. So join the Spidey Librarian Patreon today as we grow into a full-fledged Spider-Man community. Link will be in the description and show notes. But before we do a daring deep dive into our timely topic, it's time to dish on the latest Spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, The Bugle Newsflash. Okay, all right. So we've only got 2 news items this week, and we kind of discussed them on the way into the show, so to speak. But so the first one, I looked at this headline and I was like, this is so stupid. Why would you do this? So Marvel's Spider-Man 2, great game, by the way. If you haven't played it, totally should play it. It's getting a trial release on PlayStation Plus Premium. So you pay for PlayStation Plus, and then I think Premium is the highest tier. I'm not an expert on my PlayStation Plus here because I don't subscribe to it, but it kind of functions like Game Pass, all right? And so you're paying for this tier of it, and if you're doing that, then let's see. Sony gives you the ability to download the game for free, and then you've basically got like a 2-hour timer on the game. You can play the game for 2 hours before you have to make a decision whether or not to purchase it at that point. And I don't know, for me, this just seems like it does not seem to be the way that this should work. If you are paying for one of those types of services, should you not just have access to those games? And if you're going to make a trial version, just call it a demo and then release it to everyone so that they can make the decision whether or not, I don't know. I feel like they're leaving money on the table, and I also feel like they're simultaneously being greedy. So I don't know, Jaleh, do you have any opinion on this? I feel like they're being greedy and stupid at the same time.
I agree with that. It does seem super greedy. If I paid for a subscription like that and then, played 2 hours of a game and then they said, okay, now you have to buy it
at full price.
Exactly. I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah, I don't get it. And I mean, you do enough gaming to understand, like at least the basics behind how all this stuff works, And I was just like, I read that headline and I was like, this is so stupid. I have to report on it. So, who knows? I mean, I'm not a financial or business genius or anything, but I'm just kind of flabbergasted by that headline. And yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Only other piece of news that I've found worthy to report on this week comes basically from Donald Glover himself. As quite a few of you are probably aware, Donald Glover has like an interesting tie to Spider-Man lore. He basically said when they were casting for the Amazing Spider-Man that he would like to play Spider-Man, and then went on an episode of Community wearing like these Spider-Man pajamas, and it looked really good and everything. And I think because when he saw that, Brian Michael Bendis was like, "Hey, he looked pretty good there," and that helped, along with a couple of other cultural and political factors, to give rise to Miles Morales being created and everything. And uh, Donald Glover also voiced Miles Morales in, I think it was the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. And so he's got a lot of ties to Spider-Man lore. He also played Aaron Davis in Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, I think people keep talking about wanting to see him play Miles at this point. And Donald Glover himself has just basically said, I'm too old. I'm too old at this point. I don't know if that's because he doesn't want to play the character or if he's just trying to be realistic. But I mean, the way I see it, you could always, if you really wanted to just cast Donald Glover as Miles Morales, you could do some kind of like alt multiverse, this is Miles after 30 years of superheroing or 20 years of superheroing or whatever, and do it that way if you really wanted to. Now, there hasn't been a lot done with Miles as an older superhero, which I think is fine because he's still, he's still going through the motions of being a young hero. I think there's going to be a title released called Spectacular Spider-Man, where he and Peter finally have like a sort of partnership on the regular, where one is mentoring the other. Um, so I'm fine with all of that, and I do agree that he's probably too old to play that version of Miles. But I wouldn't write it out. I wouldn't write it off completely. I don't know. Jaleh, do you have any thoughts on this? I'm a big fan of Donald Glover, especially as he relates to the Spider-Man universe. So
I think if you were going to do an older Miles, he would definitely make sense. I do think it has to be like some sort of multiverse, alternate reality kind of thing. And maybe by the time they'd even get that together, he would probably be way too old to play. But right now, I think he could play an older Miles for sure.
do you I assume you've seen Across the Spider-Verse, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that version of him in, like when he has that little cameo and he tells Miles it's rude to stare and everything. So I don't remember where I read this, but somewhere someone said that's actually the MCU version of Aaron Davis, like in the Prowler costume and everything. And so I was like, so that's the same character from Spider-Man Homecoming? And it's like, yes, it apparently is. I don't know how like rock solid truthful that is, but it's fun to think about. It's like, oh yeah, I could get behind that. So I don't know. All right, and that's all the Spidey news for this week. Now, let's get ready for our feature segment, the character spotlight on Mary Jane MJ Watson. Okay. I think I learned about MJ when I started reading the comics on my own. Before that, when I was starting to express my curiosity about comic books, I had an uncle who had a big collection and everything. And he told me about Gwen Stacy and the Green Goblin and how her death had impacted Spider-Man. But I don't remember hearing anything from him about MJ and her impact on his life. When I started reading Spider-Man comics, they were already married, and the writers seemed to be having a really hard time uh, just making that work. I remember seeing storyline after storyline that revolved around her. It just seemed like they wanted to create drama. She was tense about Peter being gone all the time, and so she started smoking, and just a bunch of other things that didn't really give me a good kind of first impression of her when I first started reading her for myself. But as I delved into her history and then got my hands on some stories that really kind of elevated her character, my opinion of her started to change. And now I'm happy to say I'm pretty good with her character, for the most part. I have some issues with how they're treating her now, but I suppose we can get into that. Jaleh, how were you introduced to MJ? What were your initial impressions of her, and how have those impressions changed over time?
So I think my first impression of her probably would have been from the 90s cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon, because
Okay.
I watched that definitely before reading comics at all. And so in my mind, yeah, they were supposed to be together and that was his main love interest. And maybe a little bit similar to you, when I read the comic books, initially I thought the same thing, like they belong together. And now I'm kind of like, I either want them to be dating or I kind of want her to like go away for a bit because it's so much drama. It's so much of the same, like, what's the term? Like star-crossed lovers kind of stuff. And
Right.
they date for a little bit and then there's so much something that breaks them up and then there's all this longing and I feel like I've read it like 82 times at this point. So I'd like to see something a little bit different.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's just funny too because I've had so many discussions with so many other guests on this show about the kind of this cycle that they've got Peter trapped in, where they're trying to keep him as like a young kind of man childish person of indeterminate age, and like that affects how they write his relationships too. And the idea is that they just can't let Peter be happy. Like they always have to. They give him a little bit of a relationship, a little bit of a glimpse of happiness, and then they're just like, we're going to yank that away now, and you can come, catch it. And I get the idea of like, when you're writing, one of the rules is like, you need to kill your darlings, basically. You need to put them through the ringer to give them a story and to make life interesting. But it feels like it has been done with Peter so many times over and over again that it's just like, guys, come on, let him grow up. Stop it. I don't do you feel that way at all, or
I definitely feel that way. And I think I still read the comics, but whereas before, I wanted to go pick up the comics every single week and read them. Now I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I know what's going to happen or, I'm reading the same thing over again. So it's not quite as much of a rush to go out and read the comics and read the story because it is just the same things over again. And I think it's hard just with the nature of comics. It's kind of hard probably to do otherwise, but
Mhm.
at some point you're like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. I've read it 10 times before with Peter and maybe it's not quite as gripping as it used to be.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, like I still listen to Amazing Spider Talk whenever I get the opportunity, and you can just hear it in Dan and Mark's takes on these things. I mean, they've clearly been reading the comics forever, and like they're really good at just spotting. Yep, this has happened before. Nope, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So, um, quick question: have you heard of or read the new Ultimate Spider-Man comic that just came out?
I have not.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. I can't wait to share this with you then. So, um, there is a new Ultimate Spider-Man comic, and the premise of the story is essentially that Peter is in his, like, he's in his mid to late 30s. He has not been bitten by the spider. He is married to MJ. He has kids, and he's got a family life and everything. His uncle Ben is alive and works at the Daily Bugle. I think his aunt May, I think she may have died like in some kind of a terrorist attack that also killed like Norman Osborn and Emily Osborn. And so like different reality here. And then Peter, who is he's like happy enough with his life, but he's kind of got this feeling that something's missing. And so you can just see that he's kind of like, I'm just kind of going through life. I'm doing my thing. And then he gets basically this message from like looks like a teenage looking Tony Stark, who basically says, okay, so you're going to have to come with me on this one because you're not going to believe this. And he says, basically, when this reality was created, the person who created it tried to take superheroes completely out of the equation. And he basically gives him a little, I guess, test tube or whatever that has the spider that apparently bit Peter Parker, and basically says, you are actually a superhero. You were among the best of us. And so Peter, after kind of checking in with his family and basically like, I think I want to try something new, they're all like, do it. So he takes the spider out and lets the spider bite him. And that's the start of the Spider-Man story right there. So it takes away the entire young Spider-Man thing and puts Peter in a completely different stage of life when he gets the spider bite. And I've read the first issue. I loved it. I'm ready for it. My only reservation about it so far, and this really isn't a critique more than just a this is really different, is that usually the spider bite seems to occur accidentally. Like it's just happenstance when he gets bitten. Here he's literally making the decision to let it happen. And I don't know, like it's going to change things up, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. But just based on what I told you, how does that sound?
That sounds really interesting to me, because it's a totally new take on it. You have different characters involved even now. So it sounds like more of a fresh idea.
Yeah. And I mean, like, he consults with MJ beforehand. Like, he doesn't say what he's going to do, but he's basically like, I need to try something new. I need to try something different. And she's like, okay, I just have one question. Is it going to affect us? And he's like, no, never. She's like, well, then do it, basically, you know? And so then he pulls out this thing and sees Tony Stark, and then he's like, okay, fine, bite. And then, yeah, there it starts. So, we haven't seen too much of MJ in this comic yet, other than to establish that they're married, they have kids, and she's basically kind of, she's the better woman behind the man, basically, So we'll see what happens there. All right, well, now that we've given our personal kind of takes on MJ, we're going to delve into brass tacks and talk about the minutia of one MJ Watson. And it's funny to me because when I was titling this episode, I actually had a difficult time with the title. I was like, character spotlight, Mary Jane Watson. Okay, but is that accurate anymore? Because I'm going to just go ahead and say it from the get-go. There is a really popular version of MJ that is not the comics version and that looks very different. And she's played by Zendaya, she's the MCU version of her. And she is not Mary Jane Watson. At least that's not her name. She is like a variant of Mary Jane, but her name is actually Michelle Jones. And so I was really tempted to just put MJ or just MJ Watson or something. But these are the kinds of little minutia that I really kind of like agonize over when I'm trying to get this show on the road. We'll get into alternate versions of Mary Jane. I'm going to talk a little bit about the comic book, the 616 versions bio real quick. She was created in 1965 by Stan Lee, and John Romita Jr. Her first appearance was actually technically in Amazing Spider-Man number 25, back when Steve Ditko was still drawing it. And it was just kind of like the start of this kind of recurring joke where Aunt May is like, "Oh, I need to set you up with my friend Anna's, wonderful niece." And Peter's like, "Yeah, no." And then at one point, I think Betty and Liz were fighting over Peter. They're walking over to Aunt May's house, and Mary Jane is there. But the thing is that her face was completely obscured by like a potted plant. And like all you see are Betty and Liz's reactions to her. And they're like, if this woman is looking for Peter, like what chance do we have kind of thing going on? It isn't until Amazing Spider-Man number 42 that we actually see her. John Romita is now drawing the comic, and you get that really popular, iconic panel, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." And, that's considered one of the most iconic introductions in all of comic books because there was the build-up. There's the fact that MJ was exceptionally beautiful. She had that vibrant red hair and those green eyes and everything. And really Stan Lee and company, they didn't expect her to be as popular as she was. Reader feedback was just off the chart. And that started to change how the dynamic was going to go between Peter and Gwen, because originally Gwen had been the one true love. She was going to be the one that Peter settled down with and married, and MJ was just there kind of for fun. But eventually she married Peter. The marriage was undone in one more day. Don't get me started on that story. And they're currently on again, off again, and now she's got powers as Jackpot. And that is just a very quick, just like very glossed over, like here are the very basics on her biography. So, Jaleh, is there anything that you would like to add for that particular iteration's MJ about her bio in the comics?
I think you hit a lot of the important stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to be like fairly quick about it, but also I don't want to delve into every detail. I mean, we could do that, but I figure just kind of a quick what is it, survey? We'll go with survey for now. So, um, let me see. She had a very laid back, kind of liberated personality when she was introduced, and Gwen was kind of more of a by the book, kind of a daddy's girl, and she was very conformist, I suppose you could say, in a lot of ways, at least in comparison to MJ. She again, she's now running around as Jackpot, and I'll have words about that later. I'm not don't want to talk about that just now. Let's see. I mean, I've pretty much covered everything here. First of all, I want to ask you: are you reading The Amazing Spider-Man right now?
Yes, but on Marvel Unlimited. So I'm
Right.
just sort of
Okay.
past a lot of the all the stuff with Paul and things.
Okay. Has she gotten her jackpot powers yet for you?
She's just gotten them.
She's just gotten them. Okay. All right. So when they gave MJ the jackpot powers, I I was just kind of like, why are you doing this? Like, there are certain characters where you can see it as a part of their evolution that they get powers, and you're like, yay, but they've clearly wanted them forever, and they are aspiring to be superheroes. I've never gotten that feeling about MJ, And I know that sometimes like the best heroes are the most reluctant ones, but this, I don't know, this just doesn't feel earned to me. I'm also not crazy about Jackpot's power set and how it's completely random. And it's like, okay, so you have to learn to use your powers like on the fly. That sounds really hazardous. Um, and I think like because it's like she wears a bracelet and basically hits a button, and then it's like the powers depend on the three kind of like slot machine pictures that come out of it, right?
Right.
I think. Okay. And if she gets like three skulls, then she could die or something. Did I read that correctly?
I mean, that's my understanding of it.
Why would you take this? Like, why would you take this? You know,
It's so,
like maybe if, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I think it's super bizarre, and I think, I mean, to your point too, I've never thought of her as somebody that particularly wanted to see as a superhero, um, and especially because it that's a huge point of contention between her and Peter at different points in their relationship. Her not wanting him to be, you know, as so involved in being Spider-Man. It is kind of weird that
Yeah.
she's doing this jackpot thing now.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you know, you could make the, I suppose if you really wanted to, you could make the argument that, well, you know, like this is how she's evolved over time. And I'm like sitting here thinking under, you know, whispering under my breath, yeah, that's how you wrote her. That's not how she evolved. You know. Um, but I suppose in that way, like I could make the same argument with MJ having jackpot powers that I could with Gwen being considered kind of an inferior personality character in comparison to MJ. Like, it's really. I feel like it's at the end of the day, it's the fault of the writers. You know, it's like, okay, you tried to make them more interesting and you couldn't. That tells me, you know, that you have a lot to do. Do you have any? We're going to go back a ways. Do you have any favorite MJ like stories or moments that you think make her like the one true pairing for Peter, or just on her own being badass too? So
So, I mean, early stuff, definitely those issues after Gwen dies are super important.
yeah,
Because that is when you see, I think, more of a change in her character. Um, and I always liked, oh my God, why can't I think of the storyline? When she's like out some of the storylines where she's out when she's acting, when she's out in LA and things like that.
mm-hmm.
I think those are interesting because she's away from Peter, so you see a little bit more of who MJ is. Not
Right,
not to bring it back to Gwen, but I think one of the maybe issues with Gwen is that because they wrote her to be the one true love, like everything about Gwen was written uh in you know in light of her relationship to Peter, whereas MJ I think has
yes,
gotten a little bit of development outside of that relationship with Peter.
yeah, and I mean, you know, it doesn't help that like Gwen was very clearly Stanley inserting his wife into the comics. And so that was just kind of the intention. He'd kind of had a this is the destiny, like kind of right from the beginning, you know. And so I guess when you do that kind of thing, it kind of closes off all of the avenues that you could take to perhaps develop this character in a way that maybe you didn't intend to at first, you know, and I find that good characters they tend to take over a little bit. I've actually had it happen when I've written stories where I feel like I'm just moving the pencil, but my character is the one that's like, I've got this scene. Don't you worry about it. So it feels like that kind of was taken away from her. Whereas with Mary Jane, you really had that opportunity. She's just this, you know, she's this kind of fun, freewheeling, maybe a bit more laid back character, and she's just going to do her own thing. And so, you know, like maybe you just have more of an opportunity for that to happen. Um, I really find that like the the stories where MJ is away from Peter, particularly during JMS's run on Amazing Spider-Man, um, are really good and really kind of just establish like again who she is, and also like it shows that while Peter may not need her, she definitely kind of fills like a void that he is less what he's more prone to give into like without her around. And I feel like I don't really feel like it says as much about them being lovers as it says about them being friends, essentially. Like if you're someone who is always by yourself, and maybe you're a very self-sufficient person, that's great, but like without your friends around to kind of like ground you and sort of keep you reminding you of what's important in life, it can be very easy to forget what's important and kind of get pulled into that void. And I feel like MJ, yes, she's his wife or was his wife, um, and yes, she's very pretty. She's a supermodel and an actress and all these other things that I was just like, can you really be all those things, And then data photographer, okay, sure, whatever. But she really kind of like does a good job of centering him. And especially for someone as neurotic as Peter, you need that. So um obviously she has had a huge impact, not just on Spider-Man, but just on readers in general, comic books in general. And she's definitely, I mean, some Gwen stans are probably going to hate me for saying this. Okay, she's the definitive love of Peter's life. Like I would say, by any objective measure, she is. Gwen, unfortunately, that thread was cut short, and we're probably never going to actually get to see that except for in things like House of M, where they literally have to change reality all the time. I think that MJ has just made a lot of impact though, because she's not only been um, integral to Peter's story in the 616 comics, but there have also been just a huge number of different versions of her that people love or may favor one over the other. Do you have a favorite like non 616 MJ that you think is just as impactful, if not more, than the comic book version that we've been talking about?
I think it's got to be the Zendaya version.
I remember when she was cast as MJ, there were so many people that were like, that is not MJ, or I think the hashtag was not my MJ or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they were like, I don't want to get too much into it because I'm pretty sure we know what was driving those criticisms. But like, I think one of the big complaints was that MJ has red hair. And I'm like, okay, look. Yes, she has had red hair in those various incarnations, but when has the red hair been important to her character?
Yeah.
So, and then I saw a picture of Zendaya with her hair dyed red, and I was like, there you go. You can shut up now. Why do you like that version so much?
So I do think, I think the criticism of it was really dumb, but she isn't like the comic book version of MJ, or at least what I think of as the comic book version of MJ at all. But I find her a lot more interesting. She has a lot of personality. She definitely has a life outside of Peter, which is interesting. She's fun. She's really funny on the screen. So I think she's, a love interest that's still a really engaging character without, even if you take away the relationship part of it.
Well, and she's so much more relatable, I think, in the MCU. She's very like, she's not like pretty Miss Popular. she's a lot more of a, I guess, a misfit, I suppose. She's the person, she's the smart kid that will talk back to teachers. I loved when they were in Washington D.C. and her teacher was trying to get her to go on the tour. And she's like, I don't really want to, glorify a building that was built by slaves. And the teacher's like, are you sure? And then he looks at a nearby security guard, a black security guard, and the guy's like, you don't want to go down this route. And he's like, okay, carry on. I thought that was a brilliant scene, and really did a good job of showing who she was and how smart she was. I mean, like they gradually kind of pretty her up, I guess, throughout the movies, like a little bit at a time, but she's never like, I'm going to be a supermodel, like, and I mean, we've all seen Zendaya. She totally could supermodel. I get that. But they made that character like, yes, she's a good love interest, but she has no interest, and certainly wasn't made to look like that. So yeah, no, I think that's a good pick. Um did you ever read the, I know I mentioned Ultimate Spider-Man earlier, but I'm talking about the old school Ultimate Spider-Man. Did you ever read that one?
I've read a little bit of it, but not a ton of it.
The interesting thing for me about that MJ is that she's a pretty girl. She got the green eyes and the red hair and all that stuff and everything. And she grows up kind of like alongside Peter. She's the first person that he tells about being Spider-Man. So the dynamic is a little bit different. What's interesting to me is that this MJ never becomes like an actress or a model, partially because they're still in high school when everything ends, but also because she seems a lot more interested in becoming like kind of like Lois Lane. Like she's more of a reporter. She likes to try to figure out things and stuff like that. And they really tried to move her away from the whole supermodel bit. They gave her glasses and everything. And I thought it was a really refreshing take on the character that you know maybe before I'd read it, I would have been like, nah, MJ has to be super pretty and she's got to be a supermodel and all this stuff. And it's like, nah, she really doesn't have to be. Like, she can still be the love of Peter's life and she can have a different career, I
Yeah.
guess, Uh, uh, um, maybe one day we'll get a multiverse where MJ is like a lawyer or something, like that would be pretty cool. So, um, what about another version? Because again, she's just had so many memorable versions that I think are really cool. You mentioned earlier the animated series version, right? So I've watched it and it's been a while, but I don't remember too much about her. Do you want to talk a little bit about her?
I mean, I just remember, well, obviously she was a critical part of that story. But
Right.
she was still like mostly there just to be Peter's love interest. Because the most memorable thing for me is obviously the cliffhanger that series ends on, where you find out that she's actually like the MJ that Peter is with is not really her. And she's been,
Oh,
so there's a storyline. It's been a while since I watched it, but basically it ends on a
yeah.
cliffhanger, and you find out that MJ was not like, it's like not a clone. Well, maybe it was a clone, but there's another MJ with Peter that is not the real MJ, and this other
Right.
MJ is like out in like, you see her like spinning. So I guess she's like out in, I don't know, space, not space, but like she's out somewhere lost, and
She's out of sync with reality, basically.
exactly.
Ah, okay. See, it must have been a while since I've seen it because I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all. Maybe I didn't watch it all the way through, which I'll have to correct that at some point. But that, okay, wow. Did not realize that was a thing. So the series ends with that cliffhanger?
Yes, and I mean, they didn't know it was ending, but that's the end of the series.
Wow.
And you see her like spinning on the screen in this out of reality that she's in.
Okay. All right. That is nuts. Now I've got to watch it. I'll probably be as mad as as I was at the end of Spectacular Spider-Man when they ended season 2 with a lot of loose ends, but for different reasons. So, um, let's see. Karma is he's in the chat and asking, are we also talking about the CGI MTV Spider-Man show? MJ, I think he's talking about Spider-Man, the new animated series. Did you ever watch that?
I think I watched one episode and I could not.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it.
I saw like 3 or 4 episodes of it. I've actually got it on DVD. I just have not sat down and watched it yet. But the interesting thing about that was that they were trying to connect it to the Raimi films, and they couldn't. Like they did, but they also didn't. Like it was clearly something that was happening in its own dimension, reality, multiverse, whatever you want to call it. But like they kept making allusions to some of the events from the movies and some of the relationships from the movies and everything. And all I really know about that MJ, because again, I've only watched a couple of episodes of it. She was voiced by Lisa Loeb. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, she does the that song "Stay."
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that's like all I know about her. Like I remember seeing it, and I'm like, oh, Lisa Loeb. Yeah, I know her from that one song.
Yes.
But yeah, like they were trying to cross promote that series with the movies and tie them together as much as possible, and it as far as I could tell, it just does not work. Again, I need to watch more, but I don't know when I'm going to find the time to do that. So, um, what do you think? I've done a review of the Raimi films on this podcast already, and I think I need to revisit them and get a guest to review them with me because I don't know. I just felt like I was just talking to myself the whole time. But what do you think of the Raimi verse, MJ, the one portrayed by Kirsten Dunst?
So I have a lot of nostalgia for those movies. Because I mean, that was sort of the first, when that was coming out in X-Men, like I was really getting into superheroes at that point in my life.
Uh
But
huh.
when I rewatch them now, I'll still rewatch them. Well, except for the third one, but I'll still rewatch those. But
See, I don't understand why the third one gets as much hate as it does, but that's just me. So
um, the funny thing is I own the third one for who knows what reason twice on DVD. But I think my mom gifted me one, and she's like, "Oh, I saw this on sale. I got it because I know you like Spider-Man." So it was very thoughtful. But I was like, I did not need a second DVD version in my life.
that's fair. That's fair.
I think she's a little bit boring though in the movies when you go back and rewatch them.
I mean, like, yeah, and also, I hate to say this about her character, but I think she's kind of awful in those movies. Like, not Kirsten Dunst is a fine actress, and I'm not slamming her portrayal. What I'm slamming is the writing behind that character. She's not very likable. I feel like a lot of the time. Like, I think she, I think she like I think she cheats on both Peter and John Jameson in the second movie or something like that. And it's like I remember because like you, I've got a lot of nostalgia for the Raimi films. Those were, I mean, that was the first live action Spider-Man movie. And so I look on those very fondly, but like, on a rewatch, I was just like, God, she's kind of horrible. What does Peter see in her? And I don't know. I wish I she's just been written so well so many times that I really have a hard time understanding how they could fumble the ball so badly with her when they're doing like these first movies. I get that Peter is the main character and that you want Peter to look good and everything, but like she's a really important part of his life. Why would you make him look good at the expense of her looking bad? I guess. Um, which it's a blemish on an otherwise, I feel, very sterling series that was the first cinematic take on the wall crawler and therefore MJ. um Now she didn't appear in the Andrew Garfield movies, um but apparently the actress Shailene Woodley was supposed to have like a cameo appearance as MJ in the second movie, but I guess her scene got cut or something to that effect, which, at this point I'm kind of glad. Like, if I have so many issues about how they introduced Harry in that
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
and it's like don't do that again, please. Don't do that with MJ. Um, what do you think of Mary Jane from the Spider-Man, the Spider-Verse films, the one the one from Peter B. Parker's reality?
I like her. I mean, I don't think we get a ton of time with her, but so to me, she's not like super memorable, except again, like to Peter's reality. But
Mhm.
I don't have any issues with her.
She's very, like, I don't know. I like that because we hardly saw her in the first one. Like, she's got like one kind of really important scene, and then aside from that, she's just seen in flashbacks.
Yeah.
But in the second one, like, clearly some time has passed. They've had a kid, and I thought she was kind of cheeky and kind of funny in certain places. Like, I think when Peter was like looking over uh Mayday's bed at her and everything, is like, are we sure we're up for this? And she's like, you're asking that now? She's like, are you sure that you've got this sequence in the right order, pal? Um
I love
but
the baby,
yeah, she's
by the way.
oh yeah, the baby's awesome. The baby. I what I love about the baby is when Hobie is holding her and he's like, that's right, you're taking a crap on the establishment. You're an anarchist. I salute you, you know. Love that. Love that. Um there are two more versions of MJ that I would really like to talk about because again, I think they all make different impacts in different ways. Um, I want to talk about. Have you heard of the continuity called MC2?
It is ringing a bell.
Marvel Comics 2. It's the universe in which I think it's the Amazing Spider-Girl takes place, where
Okay. Yes.
and the reason I want to mention this one is because, of course, one more day. For those of you that can't see, I was shaking my fist. But like, essentially, Joe Quesada, whom I do not like, uh, has basically said that like the MC2 universe is kind of essentially like a natural depiction of what probably would have happened if Peter and MJ had stayed together, essentially. And so I want to mention that simply because, like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you really hated One More Day, then, you can always read that to see what actually happens. And I would argue at this point, you could probably read Ultimate Spider-Man now, um, depending on what Jonathan Hickman does with the story going forward. But I mean, it's Jonathan Hickman. I like the way he writes. So at least in the beginning. I don't know. I don't know how he does when he has to stick around for too long, but we'll see. So, and then finally, the other one is I'd like to talk a little bit about Spinneret, or basically this is Mary Jane from the from the Renew Your Vows continuity, and I'm gonna see. Hold on, I'm trying to. There we go. And of course, now that I've moved us, we're covering Spinneret. So, can I change this? Nope, I can't. All right, I'm screwed. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. So, anyways, so Spinneret is over on the left-hand side of this. As you can see, it's basically MJ, and she's wearing like a Spider-Man looking kind of costume, and she appears to have her own set of spider powers and everything. Now, unfortunately, I've only read like one or two issues of Renew Your Vows, and I really enjoyed it. And for me, in a lot of ways, it is kind of Jerry Conway's redemption for killing off Gwen. I still never cared for his decision to do that. But, he's basically writing in a continuity that, it's another post One More Day. Hey, this is what could have happened had Peter and MJ stayed together. They've got a kid with spider powers, and I think her name is Annie. But MJ herself, like, is also she's like doing the co-parenting with Peter, and they're also going out on family missions together. And again, I've only read a little bit of this, not really enough to comment on it, but I feel it's one of those interesting depictions where we've had enough people say that there is this desire for not just Peter and MJ to actually be together for good, but to also have them having like a stable kind of family life. However you want to interpret stable, I guess, because I would say going out patrolling the city as a family, I don't know if I'd call that a stable activity, but like it's just funny because MC2, Mary Jane, Spinneret, and even this new like Ultimate Spider-Man universe, like they all kind of speak to that desire that, hey, this is like a thing that readers really want. Readers really want to see this, like in the movies. I don't know if they're ever going to get to the point where they'll cast Spider-Man as like a middle-aged or whatever man and portray that, except maybe like in the animated, Spider-Verse movies or something. But I think that in particular, MJ having spider-based powers, at least in concept, is a lot of fun, and it's something that I definitely want to explore more of. Are you familiar at all with the Renew Your Vows comic? Have you read more of it than
I don't know if I've read more of it than you. I definitely didn't read all of it, but I do
uh-huh.
remember Spinneret, and I remember liking. I don't know why I didn't read the whole thing, because I remember like I didn't have any issues with it. And for as much as I was just complaining about her having powers as Jackpot, for whatever reason with Spinneret, it did not bother me. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess like that's a really good point too, because I didn't really think about that. I guess in a way, it maybe because they're spider powers and because it's kind of a natural extension of, at least a natural narrative extension of her relationship with Peter. I guess maybe that's why I didn't, kind of catch that and go, hey, the same way that we did for Jackpot. But I mean, come on, random powers, give me a break. So, but I mean, I think overall, like, I don't know. I think her character design in pretty much all of these are really, I don't want to say consistent because they are pretty different. I mean, especially when you compare them to, for instance, Zendaya, who again, is she looks different from the two that you can see, and then the other one on her other side right there. But like, I feel like when you are working with this character, when you're writing this character, um, I feel like a couple of things are important, and and Jaleh, please feel free to correct me, or if I missed something, also be sure to throw that in. But I think if you're writing MJ, obviously, one, she is, in my opinion, the definitive love of Peter's life. Doesn't mean she has to be the only one, but I think she's the definitive one. She has been just in so much media. They've had so many good storylines that revolve around their love story. She is the definitive one. She also has a whole lot of agency. She may sometimes be a damsel in distress, but I've also seen a lot of stories where she gets herself out of a lot of sticky situations because she's either thought it through, or I think I remember reading one comic where she had a gun. I was like, whoa, okay. I remember seeing another one where she had a pair of like Peter's web shooters, and I was like, okay, all right, we can go with that, you know. So she's a character that very much, while she is part of Peter's life, she very much is capable of doing her own thing. Again, portrayed also in the comics when she kind of left him for a little while. And then in One More Day when they broke him up for good. Sorry. I'm just going to keep bringing up One More Day every so often just so I can grumble. So, and I mean, really, aside from that, you can give her any career you want, it seems, you know. She can be a supermodel or an actress. She can be a reporter. She can be a student with a lot of promise that is going to do her own thing. And again, I just feel like with her, as long as you have those two elements right there, you've essentially got your essential MJ. Jaleh, how did I do?
I agree with that.
Yeah. Anything you would add, or?
No, because I mean, to me, MJ is, to your point about agency, she's a very independent woman. And I think, that's sort of a critical element of her character. But, once you have those sort of basic things, there's that's MJ.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I mean, we love her for it because, again, we know she's the definitive love of Peter's life. I'm going to keep saying that phrase, too. I'm going to keep saying just throughout the podcast occasionally, MJ, definitive love of Peter's life. And I'm going to keep saying, One More Day, grrr, Those are going to be the hallmarks of this podcast. All right. Finally, I mean, I suppose what I just said was kind of my personal take on the character. I really feel like, again, as Peter's love interest, that's great. Hopefully every superhero, deserves love, deserves their love interest, deserves that love story. But I also have grown to respect her. Like, I mean, there was a time, probably just 10 or so years ago, that I thought that Black Cat was a better match for her, and my reasoning at the time, or for Peter, and my reasoning at the time was that, well, MJ is not, like, she couldn't take care of herself in the way that Felicia can, okay? And, I kind of realized over time, like, that's really not the greatest thing to look for. Yes, Felicia can take care of herself, but that lady's going to steal Peter's web shooters out from under him as soon as she gets a chance, and she may be cute and she may be mischievous and flirty, but and yeah, if the Kingpin comes after her, she can probably last a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, she doesn't have Peter's back the same way that MJ will. And I guess for me, that's one of the more important qualities as she relates to Spider-Man lore, is that she not only has Peter's back, but is also able to kind of call him out and redirect him and make sure that he is not getting so much inside his head that it interferes with his ability to be effective. So I guess that's kind of my final personal take on this character overall. Obviously, she's very important from the comics, but again, there have just been so many iterations of her that I think, you know, that it's important to look for the commonalities that they have. So, Jaleh, do you want to do kind of like a final personal take on MJ and just kind of close us out on this section?
Yeah, I mean, I think MJ is definitely Peter's main love interest. I think one of the problems with that is that when they're not together, it can be a little like her story's just not always as interesting when they're not together and they're not in a relationship for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like with somebody like Felicia, like I like the stories when they're dating, the stories when they're flirting, the stories when they're sort of on opposite sides of things. And I think because MJ is so tied to her relationship with Peter, even if she has agency and a life outside of that, which is really good and makes her a more interesting character to read, I think for me, the stories that work are the ones where she is with Peter and like driving him to be better and driving him to think about like, well, what's my personal life versus what do I need to do as Spider-Man? How much of my life do I need to devote to Spider-Man? And I think she's interesting in that way.
It's interesting that you put it that way. Let's see. You have not played Marvel's Spider-Man 2, right?
Right.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is kind of because of what you said there, because you see it in the first and then in the second game. You see that, and I know this has come up in the comics as well, but you see that a lot of MJ's life tends to take a back seat to Peter's. She's got to support him. She's got to do this for him. And it oftentimes seems that, because, he's doing big, important superhero things. There are matters of life and death at hand and everything. But there is a really good scene where MJ actually temporarily gets taken over by a symbiote and she becomes the supervillain's Scream. And she's fighting Peter, and the symbiote is taking all of her resentments and just pulling them up to the surface and just throwing them at Peter while they're fighting. And so, like, it's a really good boss battle, but like she's also just talking about, I have to do all of these things. I have to make all of these sacrifices for you. I have to do all of this, and you never notice. And like it's like during the fight, you can like hear Peter like crying as he's realizing like how unintentionally shitty a boyfriend he's been to her.
Yeah.
And again, like I feel like, I don't know, maybe we didn't discuss that much this round, but I feel like maybe that's a theme that occasionally gets revisited with MJ, where it's like, because you'd said, when she's away from Peter, she's not always as interesting, and it feels like it's kind of like subordinating her life to Peter's superhero life, and so you got that theme very kind of explicitly at a certain point in the Spider-Man 2 game. It's a PlayStation 5 exclusive. I don't know if you have a PS5, but if you get the chance to play it, like I would highly I know you'd love it. So
Okay.
it's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, I felt like that was too cool a point not to bring up at the end here. So, yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about this character before we go, or before we go to the next section?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. And that closes out our character spotlight segment. Thanks again to Jaleh for coming back and helping me out with this take on MJ. It's always good to have you back on the show. Do you have any parting thoughts before we go? Well, I already asked you that. Never mind. Okay. Do you have any projects you'd like to plug or want to tell people where you can be found online, if you want to be found?
If you want to find me online, I'm mostly on Instagram under PB and Jaleh.
PB and Jaleh, yes. And I follow her as well. So All right. Thank you for listening. And now let's move on to the web spinners recommendations. All right. Okay, so for this week's web spinners recommendation, I'd like to blah, 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 again. Can never talk. Whenever I have to perform, I like to just trip over my tongue. It's like a hobby, you know. For this week's web spinners recommendation, I'd like to recommend the online cozy game Palia. This is a game that my fiance actually introduced me to a few weeks ago. And it's sort of like Stardew Valley, except Stardew Valley kind of in MMO form. So better graphics, and you are a human that appears like you just kind of appear from this crystal, and you're one of a bunch of other humans that are suddenly returning to, I guess, what is now Earth, but other races have kind of taken over as the main species, and so they welcome you and they give you a plot of your own land that you can build on, you clean it up, you can create a farm. And again, it's sort of like Stardew Valley but with better graphics, and you can play it online. And there's no combat. So if you're one of those people that just kind of likes to chill with a nice little cozy game, you grow your crops, you feed your animals, you maybe do some crafting, and that's your progression. I've really enjoyed it. I've spent maybe not way more hours, but I've spent more hours on it than I normally would. This kind of thing. I'm also someone who really likes a game like Stardew Valley, though. Like that is an excellent, just fun game. And Palia is basically trying to cross Stardew Valley with what is it? A massive multiplayer online role playing game sort of thing. But they've taken out the combat. You know what? I find that actually works for me. There are times when I just don't want to deal with fighting dark elves or anything. So if you're looking for something nice and relaxing that you can play online, I would check out Palia. It's spelled Palia, and it is free. You do not have to pay for it. And yeah, give it a try. Tell me what you think. Jaleh, do you have any media recommendations this week for my listeners to read, watch, play, or listen to?
Well, I know mentioned it to you earlier. I'll just go with I mean, obviously behind the tides on this one, but the Legends of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game.
Such a good game.
So great. So definitely spend probably more time playing that than I should be.
So if you don't mind me asking, how far along are you in it?
Not very far along.
Okay.
I feel like I have died so many times in this game.
Okay.
So definitely not very far. I've devoted several hours to it already, but I got it as a Christmas gift from my brother. So
oh wow, so you just got it.
Yeah, I just got it.
Oh wow. Okay, all right. Well, I'm pretty far into it. I haven't beaten the story yet, and the game has been out for almost a year at this point. But like, I like taking my time with it. But all I'm gonna say is it's huge. Did you ever play Breath of the Wild, the game that came before it?
I did not play Breath of the Wild.
Okay, Breath of the Wild was huge. What I loved about Tears of the Kingdom is it not only is even bigger than Breath of the Wild, despite having the same map, actually, but you are able to do things with the what is it? It's the crafting hand thing. You have the ability to create so many things, and you can do a lot of game breaking with it. You can like, I don't know, if you go on like TikTok or anything, or YouTube shorts, or you can find, like, first of all, you can see people tormenting Koroks, which is kind of darkly hilarious. But like, I've also seen people like take down bosses by like putting them in a cage of their own invention that has like a laser thing just spinning around until it kills them.
Oh my gosh.
It's ridiculously fun, and I think Tears of the Kingdom really did a good job of making me just yell spontaneously, God, I love this game, just because of all of the inventive things that you can do. So I'm excited for you to get further in this game because I think you'll find that it's very rewarding. So, but but yeah, I can also say that that is an excellent game. So if you have not played it and you have a Nintendo Switch, what is wrong with you? Go get that game and play it and thank me later. So, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your recommendation. And I believe that brings us close to the end of the show. All right. If you enjoyed this episode of The Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian, where I also maintain a playlist of all podcast episodes. The Webline is also available on audio services, so when you see us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or another such service, please leave a review, rating, and where possible, follow us as well. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Threads, Twitter/X, which I'm now calling Twixter, Instagram, Facebook, WordPress, and Twitch. Finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. You never know. Your email might be featured in an upcoming episode. Next Sunday, February 11th, will be a bit of deja vu for you. Jaleh will be back, and as we covered MJ in today's episode, we'll be looking over the other women who've been love interests in Peter's life. Do we think any of them have the goods to compare to MJ? You'll have to join us next week on Sunday, February 11th, to find out. Thanks again to Jaleh for returning to the podcast and doing this episode with me. It was a pleasure, as always, having you here. And thank you for listening. Until the next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.